Jesus in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. Those are the three chapters where Jesus was asked about what's going to happen before you come back at your parousia. We're using the modern Greek pronunciation because it's a living language, your parousia, or second coming. He was asked that question quite specifically, and he answered it with a number of events. And the events that Jesus mentioned there in Matthew 24 are strikingly like the seals. I remind you that in the book of Revelation, there are 7 seals, and then 7 trumpets, and then 7 last plagues or bowls of punishment. These appear to be 3 septets, if you like, groups of 7 things. First of all, the seals, then you follow with 7 trumpets, and finally you have the wrath of God expressed in the bowls of wrath. So 7, 7, 7. 3 series of 7. That gives you a nice overall, an overview of the book of Revelation. So having said that, let me simply point out to you that if you look at Mark 13, that's one of the 3 prophecy chapters of Jesus' own teaching, Matthew 24, Mark 3, Luke 21. If you look at Mark, for example, Mark 13, you'll find there a striking thing. Jesus has a number of topics in Mark 13, and he starts with false Christs by saying, "Many will come in my name." That's Mark 13, verse 6, Mark 13, verse 7. So the first warning that Jesus gives is watch out for fake teaching, for teaching which is claiming to be biblical but isn't. That is, many will come in my name saying, "I'm the Messiah," and then mislead a lot of people. That was the first thing. Secondly, the red horse in the seals in chapter 6 of Revelation looks awfully like nation will rise against nation. That's what you find in Mark then. So you begin with false messiahs, false Christs. Then you have a reference to war, nation against nation in Mark 13:8. Then you have a reference to a black horse. This sounds awfully like famines, as in Mark 13, verse 8. And then number 4, a pale horse called Death and Hades, which is the grave. Hades is where all the dead go when they die. And that seems to be equivalent to pestilence in Luke 21:11. And then number 5, martyrs. You have this expression, this question, how long? The martyrs are saying, how long before you intervene to justify our death at the hands of cruel persecutors? And corresponding to that, in Mark 13, you have persecution and witness. Number 6, you have a great earthquake in the seals, and that corresponds, it appears, to great earthquakes in Luke 21 and Mark 13. Luke 21:11, you can't look up all these verses now, but corresponding then with the great earthquake, the seals, you have great earthquakes in the Olivet Discourse of Jesus. Sun, moon, and stars are there. So you have heavenly signs. The sun, moon, and the stars in Mark 13 are going to be shaken, they're going to be altered, cosmic signs corresponding then to that seal in Revelation chapter 6. So you see, there is a correspondence. So it's reasonable. I'm not saying this is dogmatically the only way to look at this, but it looks as though Jesus in the book of Revelation is repeating the same sequence of events as the seals are unpacked, exactly the same sequence of events as we find in his own prophecy in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. Have they already been broken? I don't think we can say dogmatically. We've had a lot of international wars, particularly in the last century. That's true. World War I, World War II. But we still have international wars, at least threat of that. So I'm not sure whether we've actually got into the seals yet. But we will expect a sequence then, following that pattern given by Jesus in his Olivet Discourse and reflected, it would seem, in the 6th and 7th seals, 1 through 6 seals. So they represent different awful things: world war, famine, sickness, and then following that, the shaking of the cosmic world, the stars and the sun being darkened. And then following that will come the great splendid return of Jesus, the parousia, second coming of Jesus. And at the 7th trumpet now, remembering we have 3 septets, you have 7 seals, you have 7 trumpets, and you have 7 last plagues. That's an easy way to remember the book of Revelation. And at the 7th trumpet, I can assure you, Jesus will come back and he will raise the dead of all the nations who were true Christians, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets. When you see them in the kingdom, Jesus said, they will be raised from death. That's where they currently are. They're not in heaven. Nobody's in heaven. Nobody goes to heaven when they die. That's a story that's been made up. No, you go to the grave and you sleep in the dust of the ground, and you'll be raised from death to immortality at the 7th trumpet. That's the last one of the sequence of 7 trumpets. And the question was particularly to do with the 7 seals. They are in principle then exactly the same sequence as Jesus gave in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21.